So, welcome everybody to the 10th edition of the Cannabis Thinking Talks. My name is Alex Lucena, and I'm an associate partner and head of innovation for the Green Hub. And this is a very special edition of this talk. But before I introduce our guests, it's a pleasure for me to have, for us, for the Green Hub, to have for the first time, Patricia Vilela Marino with us tonight. She's a co-founder and president for Humanitas 360 Institute that works in several countries in the Americas to reduce violence and improve the quality of the population in general. So Patricia, hopefully this is the first of many, many talks that we have you with us. Thank you so much being with us tonight.
Thank you.
And of course, my partner, associate partner, Marcelo Greco from the Green Hub, and that when it comes to the cannabis industry is certainly one of the top specialists in our country. So we have 3 Brazilians and 2 Colombians. This is a very Latin American conversation, although we're doing it in English, and we'll be providing subtitles in Portuguese and Spanish. So I guess we'll be able to speak with about 70 to 80% of the entire world population with these 3 languages, give or take. So with no further ado, I would like to introduce 2 Colombians, as I said, and here. So first of all, my friend Juan Pablo Escobar, he's an architect and founder of books and an entrepreneur as good as it gets. So Pablo is in Mexico today, where he has ongoing business. He lives in Argentina, and he's a very close friend of the Green Pablo.
Thank you very much. A pleasure to be here with you. An honor. Thank you.
And Juan Manuel Galán, former senator from Colombia, and a person that had a very important participation shaping up the legislation, the cannabis legislation in Colombia, among many other things. Also an entrepreneur, a consultant for governments from all over the world. So Galán, as well, fantastic having you with us with this conversation with the 3 Brazilians and of course, Pablo.
Thank you very much, Alex, for the invitation. Hello to Patricia and to Sebastián.
Hello, Juan Manuel.
So tonight we'll be talking about many topics here next hour or so, including the evolution of the cannabis market, prohibition, legislation, the so-called war against drugs, okay? I prefer the word peace. It's Pablo's statement. It's not the war, but the peace that we're trying to, the word peace involved in this conversation very heavily. Public policies, health in the use of cannabis, and something that is very, very important, which is peacemaking among people, which is so important in the world that we're living in at this point. So I would like to start with you, Pablo. Pass the ball to you, as we say in soccer, in football, for your initial remarks. So if you could, in the next 5 minutes or so, introduce yourself for those who don't know you, and tell us a little bit about how you and Galán got to meet each other. What is the storytelling that we love to hear from you two? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alex. My name is Juan Pablo Escobar. I am the son of Pablo Escobar. I legally changed my name once my father passed away. And I decided to move from Colombia to stay away from violence, the violence that somehow I inherited from my father, and the hate and everything that was after us and after my family. So we needed to escape from violence. We went to exile, and we have been living for the past 26 years of our lives in Argentina. And my father was perhaps recognized, sadly, as one of the most dangerous and wealthiest drug dealers in the world. He built the Medellin cartel, and sadly, he took one of the worst decisions in his life, and he ordered the killing of Juan Manuel's father, Mr. Luis Carlos Galán. He was a presidential candidate that was for sure going to be our next president. But the war on drugs brought a lot of violence to the country, and my father was highly responsible for that. And this is how I get to know Juan Manuel, because I wrote a letter for him and for his brothers and family, because I was asking for forgiveness, in terms of the damage that my father caused to their families. And because I truly believe that peace and reconciliation is not a theory, it's something that we can truly, overcome and move forward and have for ourselves in our society. So thanks to the generosity of Juan Manuel and his brothers, I had the opportunity to meet him in person in Colombia in the year 2008, in October. Once we could have the opportunity of meeting each other for a documentary called Sins of My Father. So since then, I have the honor and the privilege to know Juan Manuel, and also it was very hard for me to speak with him and with his brothers about the violence they suffer thanks to my father's actions. So this is mostly how I know Juan Manuel and how I am preparing to move forward in life in terms of forgiveness and reconciliation. So that will be the story, the short story. I'm sorry, Alex, your microphone is mute.
I apologize. No, and of course, just to compliment, saying that you're an architect and an author of books that are currently out there. So just 2 lines about what you like to write about.
Thanks for helping me out with the books and the curriculum that I have. Well, yes, I forgot that part, because for me, it's like what I did in life is not important. What I'm just trying to do is seeking forgiveness and trying to find a way so the world could, have the opportunity to declare peace on drugs and to have a wiser way to understand and to handle this problem that can affect us all, without any discrimination. So this is mostly my story.
Perfect. Galán, would you like to step in, please?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. And well, my father, Luis Carlos Galán, was a former presidential candidate. As Sebastian mentioned it, he was very close to gaining the presidency of Colombia in the year 1990. And when he started very early in life, his political career, he was appointed Minister of Education when he was just 26 years old. Then he was at 28 appointed as ambassador from Colombia to Italy. And I spent the 3.5 first years of my life in Italy. And my brother was born in Italy. That's why my father picked the name Claudio, because he wanted to honor Italy through my brother's name. And when he was ambassador, he saw the danger and the threat that the mafia, Italian mafia, established against the political establishment, trying to penetrate the political establishment, and also many other sectors of society. And that experience that my father lived in Italy was the thing that made him see clearly in Colombia when these mafias started to grow exponentially because of marijuana, because of emeralds, because of cocaine in the 1980s. He saw beforehand in Italy the damage that the mafia could cause. And that's why he started to speak up about the dangers for the Colombian democracy, the Colombian society, of allowing such a criminal project to prosper and to threaten the society as a whole, because narcotraffic not only threatens through violence, crime, but through corruption. Because I sustain that in Colombia, narcotraffic has not only being a criminal project, but a political project, trying to dominate territory, populations, trying to buy elections, to co-opt the political power at the local level, at the regional level, and at the national level. We have had presidential campaigns financed by illicit drug money. We have had congressmen elected with the support of the drug dealers, and at every level of the administration and the government, drug money through the criminal organizations have tried to penetrate the state and the political power. So my father speak up against these threats and these real dangers, and for that, and the war on drugs, he was assassinated. He was assassinated the 18th of August of 1989 in Suacha. It's a very small town right near Bogota, the capital. And well, many people said when he was assassinated that hope was assassinated for the Colombian people. A whole generation of Colombians had hope that Luis Carlos Galán will open the gates of a new society, a more just society in terms of income, in terms of disparities between rural population and urban population, a country that empowers local authorities to have real power in terms of budget, in terms of decisions to apply and benefit their people. So all this country, many people think a whole generation of Colombia was assassinated with Luis Carlos Galán. So the peace process now that we are trying to save, it's a new hope for those ideas, those ideals that my father stood for. And I decided to got involved in politics because of my father's assassination. If my father could live on and be president of Colombia, I would never got involved in politics. I got involved in politics because I thought when I learned the sad news, the painful news that our father was killed, that all those years of efforts, of sacrifices, of time consumed, going out in the whole country, speaking out, risking his life all the time, was worth of continuing fighting for his cause. That's why my brother and I got involved in politics, thinking about his ideals, his ideas, and not seeing his ideals killed with him. But not only Pablo Escobar was behind my father's assassination. The Cali cartel was also behind my father's assassination. The paramilitaries that were financed by narcotraffic, with the complicity of many members from the security apparatus from the state, the army, the police force, the DAS, which was the official office of intelligence in Colombia, among with corrupt politicians, among with members of this security complex of the state. The general Maza Marquez was condemned because he was found guilty of being one of the murderers of my father, the head of the intelligence in Colombia, and also a famous politician who was Minister of Justice in Colombia, who was working with both drug cartels during the 1980s, Alberto Santofimio Botero, who worked for the Cali cartel and at the same time worked as an advisor, as political advisor for the Medellin cartel. So it was a whole complot a whole conspiracy behind my father's assassination. And I think the intent was to assassinate the hope of change in Colombia, not only to kill an enemy of the narco traffickers who stood for extradition as a way to combat the immense power financially that narco traffickers had. But I think the ideas that he stood for, the peace in Colombia through negotiations, was one of the other motives that got through for assassinating my father.
Very, very impressive, the whole story. Patricia, would you kindly step in the conversation here, and you just, we could keep the sequence. I mean, maybe Pablo can go first and Galán can go second, but Patricia has the word now.
Okay, thank you. And I not only would step in kindly, but as a privilege. Thank you very much. And I would like you furthermore to introduce myself as a friend to these wonderful, exemplary citizens, Colombian natives, but citizens of the world, because what they can tell and what they can teach us by how they have been managing their lives in a very, very exemplary way, as I said. Well,
Yes.
And today, friends, we are having a very special day. That's the World Day to celebrate Thanksgiving, right? And I think that is very, very special for us to be here all together. I think that every one of us, we have many reasons to give thanks. And even if we don't have a reason, by faith, we should all give thanks. But these two gentlemen, they have so much to teach us in terms of generosity, because only out of a huge amount of generosity, one can repent and one can forgive. And it's all about repentance and forgiveness tonight. Because if we don't repent and if we don't forgive, we won't be able to move forward. We won't be able to have a good law, a law that really thinks of human beings. And we much less will be able to have a good regulation of any law that we might have in place. So yes, we have to think about others and going beyond ourselves. Because if a human being has a problem, it's a problem of I. We think of ourselves. And having these two gentlemen here with us today, I bet that we are going to learn and we're going to be well taught that we should think more and better about others instead of just thinking about ourselves. Well, my two very good friends, I am so happy to be here with you. And I'm sure that you both have to overcome a lot of anger, that you both have to overcome an immense thirst for justice, for self-justice. And you have to overcome so much prejudice and persecution in life so far. But yet, you decided to take another way. You didn't stay just the way life could take you, hating each other and hating the world, blaming each other and blaming the world for what have happened to you. But you decided to go beyond. And by going beyond, you decided to forgive each other. Please tell us, is it really the war on drugs the way to go? Is it really this war on drugs something that we still have to believe in? Because in my country, there is a war going on, but it's a war based upon ideology. People do not believe in science. People do not believe in scientific data. And I know, Galán, that when you pick up this cause, you base yourself in science and scientific data. When they spray, when you are able to prove against the spray in the crops. So please tell me where ideology should stop and when science should kick in and when we must change our way of thinking because we don't have the truth. We are not the truth.
Very good question.
Thank you. Should I answer first of Juan Manuel, please?
Please go ahead.
Go ahead, Pablo.
Okay. Thank you, Patricia, for allowing me to have this opportunity to join you and Juan Manuel and Alex and Marcelo and to share these experiences with the world. And well, I think that, from my perspective, the war on drugs, the only thing that is supporting is corruption, destruction, the loss of human values. And it's the formula we are trying to use for the past 100 years without any results, any positive ones. So if you make the list and if you take in count that how many cartel leaders were announced, by the authorities in the whole world that were destroyed or, let's say, killed or in jail. So it's like we lost count of how many organizations in the world are related with the drug trafficking business. And of course, for the past years, the decades, the authorities are announcing, that these organizations are being dismantled. But, the drugs continue available for everyone. And I'm not saying that the drugs in the whole world are the best choice for sure, but I'm saying that we have to take and to recognize every single drug as an individual. We cannot compare each and every one of them. And in terms of talking about cannabis and the whole prohibition, I think that the world today has very different information about the cannabis. And of course, I saw this, prohibition is a business. It's a great business opportunity for the ones who are promoting the prohibition. And this is, and how can I say this? And if you think about it, and if you can compare today's stories with my father's in the past, you will see that the drug traffickers in the world, they are receiving so much possibilities to negotiate with the justice system that they can get out, they can be free in a couple of years, and that will be all. And in the times when my father was alive, that didn't happen, and all the drug dealers were trying to keep as far away as possible from the United States because they were afraid of them. But today, they are willing to go because they know that they will receive very good deals with the justice system. So sadly, the message that prohibition is sending to humanity today is that sadly crime does pay, because it's just a matter of how much money do you have to pay for your sins, and you can move forward with your life. So that's a very sad message that is being sent away to a lot of young people who truly believe that my father's story is a successful story, and I don't believe he's a success case. I believe he's exactly the opposite. So I think that the world should give, ourselves as humanity the possibility to change the formula of prohibition because it's not working at all. We have several examples. I remember, just to say a couple of numbers, when my father was in his golden era in Colombia, compared to today's and how much amount of land are being used in Colombia to grow the coca plants and everything, we have 3 times more than ever, so it's not working, sadly. So I think we should look for some other opportunities, and if the government of any country can take control of this very profitable business, of course, the government will have the possibility to invest in education, in awareness of how to use properly this. And of course, as I said from the beginning, the drugs are not good for sure, but they are even worse when they are in the hands of the criminals. And just by decree, the most profitable business in the world is in the hands of the criminals because, there's a decree who says that. And so we need to give ourselves the opportunity to change the law. And just to summarize my conversation is, I wanted to say to Juan Manuel that I admire him a lot because his father died because he was, fighting against this. But now that he is doing his best to bring peace to Colombia, changing the law and trying to find more positive ways to face this. That's something that, you know, I have to say to Juan Manuel that I really admired from him, because you know, everybody could think that because his father passed away and died because of this war and my father's actions, he will be full of hate and against any way of legalization. So I think that his testimony is absolutely important to make the world, you know, aware that it's not about hate, it's not about any personal feelings, it's about trying to seek the best way to face this very human problem of addictions.
Juan Manuel?
Okay, no, but let me first say that I admire deeply Patricia. She's a very, very close friend of mine. I feel it like that way. And maybe I have to reveal a conversation we had in her house. And she was trying to tell me something, and I felt she was kind of afraid of sharing this with me. And she got courage and she told me about her friendship with Sebastian. And immediately I said, well, you're doing the good thing. You're doing the right thing. And that's why we started to speak about Sebastian, about his struggles with life, because I remember my father saying that the first victims of narco traffickers are their own families. Their own members of their families are the first victims of a narco trafficker, because not only they have to deal with violence, they have to deal with the stigma of the name they have, which is a very hard thing to live with. And I think Sebastian has been very courageous of seeking out, taking the initiative of looking for his father's victims and trying to share these conversations with them to heal the pain. I think as a victim, we all feel an enormous pain when we lose someone so precious to us as our father in such an age as 17 years old, when you need your father maybe more than any time in your life. But I remember thinking about pain and thinking about that we have a decision to make. We can take this pain that we feel and put it towards hate. I mean, converting this pain in hate, which is a poison, I think, hate. Or you can take this pain and make this pain a driving force in life for changing things, for seeing things in another way. And I took the decision of taking my pain that I feel every day, because pain never fades away. I mean, in these 31 years that I lost my father, there's not a single day that I don't think about him, that I don't think about how he thinks and see things that are happening right now in the world, in Colombia, in many, many areas. So I think Sebastian also was able to take this pain that he felt in his own heart, in his own life, and maybe took the same decision that I took, to take this pain and put it as a driving force towards change, towards humanity. And that's also why I got involved in this cause for legalization of all drugs. I don't say it in Spanish, because in Spanish legalization means like liberalization, which is not what we are talking about. We are talking about that something that criminals control today as access to substances, quality, security, and price should be controlled by the state. And I think abandoning the war on drugs it's a moral obligation, it's a moral cause. And we have, as a generation, an obligation of not inheriting to the next generation the same war on drugs that we've been dealing with for 50 years, since Richard Nixon in the 1970s declared the war on drugs, which is a failed war. Like every war is a failure. And I think this is a failed war because we only have blood, victims, displaced people. We have crime, violence, and we have corruption for the political system and for the democracy. And I think Sebastian said a very wise thing. Prohibition is a great business for the people who lives on prohibition, not only the criminals, the narco-traffickers, but the members of organization and institutions and establishment of the prohibition, with the security contractors, with the people that sells the chemical precursors to make cocaine, because cocaine doesn't grow from a tree. You grow coca, and then you take those leaves, and with chemicals, you transform that on cocaine. And so there's a whole industry for a few in the war on drugs and in prohibition. And that's why I said we have a moral obligation to change this policy and to base this policy on evidence, on data, on information, on science, on the historical experience of 50 years, on the communities that have suffered directly the violence of the war on drugs, which they want another way of dealing with this. And the last thing I would say is that I don't see drugs as the enemy. We don't have to seek a world free of drugs. Drugs have pre-existed our existence of a human race. And when we disappear from the planet, drugs most probably will live on in nature. So what we need to do is deal with a question that is more profound. And it's why human beings, especially in the Western world, in the materialistic world, where people see well-being as accumulated material things, as a power to purchase things. I think well-being is another thing that doesn't have anything to do with being rich. I know very rich people that are very miserable in life, that very incomplete, that are very unsatisfied spiritually and in many, many ways. So I think we have to deal with why human beings look for drugs, to evade the reality, to fabricate like artificial paradise. And I think that's why we have to change the policy towards knowing what happens to human beings that they tend to abuse on substance and have an irresponsible and abusive consumption of drugs, and change the way we see consumption. I think consumption is not a bad thing in itself. I think many people get on with their lives, in their families, in their communities, in their workplace, and their academic life without having any problems. But people that have problems with drugs, problematic consumption or addiction, need a public health approach, a human rights approach. I was thinking about the recent death of Maradona, which is an idol, a god for the football world, which is for Brazil also a religion, as in Argentina. And
Yes.
to see this sad life in addiction with nobody to help him got away from this trap of addiction is a very sad thing for such a talented football guy, which all in the world admire because of his talent.
Yeah, well remembered. I couldn't agree more with you both. will call, and lots of food for thought. Wow, my mind is going 100 kilometers per hour here as you guys speak. Marcelo, can you
So
jump in the
many,
conversation, please?
of course, so many. First of all, thank you for the opportunity of being here, talking to Patricia, to Sebastian, to Galan. It's a real honor. And thank you for all the collaboration you guys are giving to this subject, which is really important. I would like to bring to the conversation now a brighter side of everything. So we had all this history back and everything that we learned, all the negative things that we had with the war on drugs. Um, and I see now that we have an opportunity to bring to Latin America a brighter future, mainly with cannabis that we're working right now. So in Brazil, we're living in an excellent moment in terms of developing projects, focusing cannabis. But in political terms here in Brazil, we're moving really slow. In Latin America, we see many countries approving new regulations. We see Ecuador, we see Argentina, Paraguay, with good regulation towards hemp. But at the same time, we see already people, like an example in Ecuador, asking many questions on what are they going to do with these new regulations now. So we know we can grow hemp. They said we had many opportunities, but some countries are only giving them the opportunity to grow, but they're not teaching them, they're not training them, they're not helping them in any way. So right now, investors and people that are, small growers are asking many important questions on how to build the supply chain for this new ecosystem. So this is a question for both of you. So how can Latin America governments come together and support and help these initiatives and opportunities that are being presented mainly with cannabis?
Pablo?
Okay.
Just
Well,
to follow
thank you.
order.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Marcelo. Well, I think it's it's a cultural problem. That this is how I see it. It's very difficult to propose something that is going to truly change, our way to, let's say, to live next to the drugs we can find in every country. So I think it's there's a lot of contradictions that I see today. You can because at the same time we are receiving some kind of help from the United States in Colombia to fight the war on drugs, and at the same time they are legalizing marijuana in the United States. So it's like we are living just a very special time. And when you can see that there's a lot of contradictions in the middle, because in the same way, the same country who is promoting prohibition in some other countries is the same country that is promoting legalization in his own territory. So this is something very unique. And it happens here in Mexico, where I am now. It's, the United States, I don't know how many states already legalized, but here it's still today is prohibited because it's not totally legalized, but it's like you can find so difficult stories. I've been talking with the militaries, and you can see that they receive orders, they wanted to stop some, let's say, some trucks that are loaded with cocaine, but perhaps they could receive a call from the U.S. authorities and say, hey, let those trucks continue. So it's like we don't understand what's going on. And just to say one last thing, to talk a little bit about the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Administration, and I think that we should pay a lot of attention to the name. They are the administrators. They never promised that they were going to put an end to the business. So this is what they are doing, and I think we need to propose a change and to invite them to see things differently, because the only truly effective weapon against the drugs, is education. And it costs less than the guns they are using and everybody's using. And as I told to my father, if you need guns to defend your own ideas, you have to check your ideas. And this is the situation we are living today. I see there's a lot of contradictions because nobody knows the rules. They are making some rules in their own territory and proposing the opposite ones in the next ones, in the other's territory. So you can understand that there's a great business behind. And I cannot stop thinking about the Cali Cartel brothers, the Rodriguez Orejuela brothers. They pay to the United States governments like $2 billion just to erase their family members from the Clinton list. So imagine how much power, is giving prohibition to the civilians, but at the same time, how much money this represents to the ones who are pursuing them. So we see, sadly, a lot of stories about corruption that sadly nobody talk about them. But, my father even worked with some DEA members, as a partner. And I should say this, and this is the purpose. And I'm not trying to accuse anyone of being responsible of anything. And I cannot say that this institution is totally corrupt, because that will be unfair, totally unfair. But I should say that the natural situation of how is this business, the rules of this business, of the drug trafficking business, are so mixed up that nobody truly understands who's in charge and who's really in charge of this situation. And I think that Juan Manuel, of course, he will have a very international perspective and about what's going on with the countries and every legislation and everything. So I think this is what I can give as an answer for now.
Oh, excellent vision, and contradiction is the word, and you're exactly right. I totally agree with you. We have to solve that as well.
Thank you.
Bella?
Yes, I agree with Sebastian about the idea that the United States right now has shown, and not right now, I mean, through the whole war on drugs history, has shown a double moral standard for combating supposedly drugs and conducting the war on drugs. I think we have to see the regulation of cannabis as a change of the narrative, as a change of the conception that many people have without any evidence that marijuana is only harmful and that that's why it's an illegal drug. I mean, if we see the history of prohibition in the US, and if you analyze that history, you will find that prohibition has nothing to do with the substances and with the drugs. The driving force behind prohibition is racism and is a repression of minorities from Latinos coming to the US. If you see, all the prisons in the United States are full of Black people, African Americans, and from Latinos. And that's a private business, the prisons in the United States, because they are privatized. And so the owners of those businesses, their interest is to keep the prisons full of people. So if you see prisons in Europe that are closing because they don't have enough inmates to keep the prisons open, mainly in Holland, for instance, and in other countries of Europe, in the United States, it's a great business to have a prison. And the police in many states have this brutal violence against African Americans like George Floyd and against Latinos, and the pretext to be racist and to have violent repression against those populations is that drugs are illegal. And we have these cases also in Colombia with the people that we call mulas, which they have capsules in their stomachs of cocaine, of heroin, and they go through your airport security trying to pass these drugs, but that helps police to present a press conference with these mullahs with a few grams of cocaine or drugs. And then you see by sea on the Pacific, for example, ships with 20, 30, and 40 tons of cocaine. So there's a lot of hypocrisy and a lot of corruption, as Sebastian said, about this conducting of the war on drugs. And that's why The Economist have published 2 times in its history, one in the 80s and one more recently, a cover of their magazine asking for a regulation, a legalization of all drugs. But we have also the problem of Vienna and the United Nations. We have 2 conventions, one from 1961 and another one from 1971, which have this legal international framework about drugs. So we need to reform these conventions, but we have the opposition of a very prohibitionist countries like Russia, China, and Iran. Those are the 3 main advocates in the international community of keeping the status quo of the war on drugs and not having a different approach on the drug policy. And well, I hope that the arrival of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris in the US as president and vice president will mean some evolution, as we saw with Barack Obama, some evolution on the drug policy. When Barack Obama said that marijuana was less harmful than alcohol, I mean, I never dream about hearing a US president pronouncing things like that. So I have a hope on the new US government that will make a change, an evolution, and a hope towards a more sensitive, more human rights based, more public health based policy on drugs.
Same here, my friend, same here.
Very good.
I lived many, many years in the United States of my life, and I know exactly where you're coming from. Patricia, please step on again.
Thank you for asking, because I couldn't hold myself back here.
Try to get organized.
Can you call me? Well, let me start by making 2 comments. And my first comment is on Pablo's, which I will paraphrase his idea. If you need guns to advocate your ideas, you better revise your ideas. And I think that it just come in the right times to our nation, to our country. Because right now here, it looks like people believe that they need guns. And if they don't have one in hand, they will perform with their hand a gesture that will show how much they believe in the power of a gun, which is very, very sad, because we have an incredible tool inside of us, which is our brain and our intellectual power of argument and exchange ideas and dialogue, which is exactly what we are doing here. So I love when you said that, my friend Pablo, because it couldn't be more precise to what we are living here. And second, to Juan Manuel's idea about the double moral mindset stance. This is exactly that, right? Because while in some countries, they are legalizing the business of marijuana, they are not tackling the most profound and deep problem, which is a societal problem. The incarcerated people who were incarcerated because of marijuana. And my third comment, and it also regards to our talking, It's that people, it looks to me that ideological people, they drag us to talk about marijuana when we want to talk about cannabis. And trying to make us confused or believing that we are talking about the same matters when we are not. And I think, you know, if somebody invite me to talk about cannabis, we are going to talk about public health. We are going to talk about life, well-being, and the well-being of the family members of the sick people who needs this as a medicine. Are we going to talk about marijuana? Then we are going to talk about public security, and we are going to talk about incarceration. And I think that this distinction needs to be made all the time. Otherwise, we will take our audience to the wrong point of thinking. Well, back to my questions to you, gentlemen. It looks to me that we have pretty much the same idea, that money talks. And money talks very highly when it comes to negotiate or bail out legal consequences for actions. As a matter of fact, the most punitive and prohibitionist countries that we have in the map are the countries that have the larger mass incarcerated populations. And this is not by coincidence. And I think that we also agree here that is a tremendous business. When you incarcerate people based upon a law that is absolutely racist and divisionist, we are making people more disenfranchised. We are taking fundamental rights away, and we are making people more disempowered and stigmatized. And we are creating a great cost for the country, a cost that will only be noticed with time, because there is a cost in lacking people to the workforce, and there is a cost because people cost when they are incarcerated, and mostly when they are rotten inside of the public institutions. Would you agree with me that this is ultimately connected with the racist policies that we have in our countries and in countries that neighbor our countries? And that demands a huge, deep, profound, probably generational mindset change.
Pablo, please.
Okay. Patricia, yes, I totally agree. You know, it's I should confess that for me, you know, having the perspective that prohibition is totally linked with racism, for me is, you know, I'm like, wow, I'm surprised, you know, just to hear that theory, and I think that's totally exact and correct. It's like I'm just digesting, you know, that is totally new for me, that perspective, and I truly believe in that. And I believe that is, you know, and when we talk about the inmates, perhaps in the United States, and it's they have like workers for them for a very low price. It's like a new way to be a slave. And this is how I used to call, with, you know, the highest respect, but I think that I call the drug traffickers today like the modern slaves, because they think they are working for free for themselves, and they are being so rich and etc. But they don't know that they are working for someone else who's going to take all the assets and the money and the power out of them, and will use that for other purposes. So they don't know, because they think that they are just living la vida, but someone else is behind them and is going to take all of the assets for them. And this is exactly what's happening with the drug traffickers today. So having that perspective of, you know, prohibition and racism is something that we should keep for ourselves, to think about it, and to propose a change of perspective, a change of, you know, we have to overcome this way of thinking and give ourselves a second chance to design new politics, new policies on drugs, because the ones that we have today are not working and are, you know, damaging more the society than helping it.
Yeah, when you mention the slaves, it reminds me of the Brazilian favelas, right? That you guys know, when kids at the age of 12, 13 are already involved in the drug system, and the expectation of life is maybe 20, 25, and that's about it. So it's slavery is a word that definitely applies, I believe. Yeah, you mentioned that. Galán, can you take it?
Yes, I will say about Patricia's question that there's nothing more racist than the war on drugs that I can think about today. And I think if Martin Luther King was alive, if all those champions from the civil rights in the US in the 60s were alive, they will stand up today against the war on drugs because it's a new frontier on combating structural racism, as they call it today in the United States. And I think that's a thing that it's deeply dividing the United States right now between what Trump's represents with 75 million votes, and then what the other half of the United States that voted for Biden with 77 million votes. It's a deeply divided country, and I think war on drugs contributes to that division. And I think Brazil is a country with a huge African American population, African Brazilian population. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but in Salvador de Bahia, there were coming in more slaves than the whole United States combined. So I think that issue in Brazil, it's a tremendous issue for the future of the Brazilian society as a society united, as a society that recognizes itself as Brazilian, as sharing the same values, the same principles, the same idea of their nation. And I'm sorry I'm talking about Brazil, but that's my point of view about how I see you. And
55% or 54% of the population is African descendant in Brazil.
It's incredible.
56.
And I think what Patricia has been doing with the women inmates, helping them reshape their lives, reshape with a project of social entrepreneurial project that has changed dramatically the lives of women that they didn't have any hope at all. And we didn't have this, I don't know how they call it in English, resocialization principle of the sentence. When you are sentenced to prison, you have to pass a process of resocialization, as we call it in Colombia. And I think the resocialization aspect of the prisons is very weak in our countries. I mean, people when they get into prison, they go out as criminals, most of them.
Yeah.
So I think to build them a project that gives them hope when they go out, for them and for their families and for the communities, is a thing that we have to celebrate. And I admire that work that Patricia has been doing with those women.
Patricia, would you you were just mentioned a couple of times.
Thank you. And well, I just think, and I think that we all agree tonight that we can only just talk. We have to walk the talk. And by pointing the problem, that does not take us out of the equation. Bring us to the equation. If we point out the problem, make yourself responsible to come out with some sort of, if not the entire solution for the problem, but at least a way. And make yourself responsible, make yourself accountable. And responsibility is something that it seems to me to be out of fashion nowadays. We like to blame others, but we don't like to make ourselves responsible for whatever good and bad happens in our countries and whatever good and bad happens in our society, in our community. So if I point out that we live in a racist society, and I had an upbringing that was very racist myself, I have to step in and bring some sort of awareness to myself, to my family, and to the people that I live with, and make some sort of change. But the change starts within ourselves. And that's what I believe that Galán is referring to, because he's been watching and he's been, supporting what we are doing. And as much as Sebastian also, and bringing others together. We, as I said, we got to change our mindsets. And first of all, we need to understand how punitivists and how prohibitionists we were and we are, because we belong to this. It's not something that happens outside of us. And by making this, self-criticism, thinking process, we can be changed and we can change.
Oh, fantastic. It's my role, and I hate doing this, especially on an occasion like this, but it's about time that we wrap it up. So, Patricia, since you're at it, would you is it okay to leave your final comments, remarks, and leave a message before we'll circle around, and we'll wrap it up in the next few minutes.
Well, I think I just did some of it, but okay. I would really call the attention of our audience to be very, very aware, very wise, very great, to take a stand on a matter that we know very little. So be careful when you take a position, when you take a stand. We know very little. Be aware of what's been talking. If we are talking about cannabis, if we're talking about marijuana, those are two very different things. Let's really focus on public health. Let's focus on reconciliation. Let's focus on making peace out of a matter that only has brought violence, death, and division into our societies. Our two very honorable guests here are really living proof of how life can take sad, difficult paths, but also history must not determine our paths, our future. We can change history if we are faithful, if we believe in second chance, and if we believe that human beings have an opportunity and have a talent, have a gift that no other, living creature has, which is our intellectual power and our power for compassion.
Fantastic, Patricia. Marcelo, buddy, your final words and comments, please.
Yeah, so really, really grateful and really, really nice. Some coincidence, like Patricia said, today is Thanksgiving, so an opportunity to have this talk on this special day with these two wonderful gentlemen. And this is our 10th edition of the Cannabis Thinking Talks, and our first one was Steve D'Angelo, where we talked a lot about social and about how not fair it is for some people getting rich with cannabis in the United States, and how so many people are still imprisoned and so many people are suffering prejudice and racism is going on. So it's an honor to have the last one. So the first one of the year was we approached social, and then the last one we're approaching forgiveness, and we're approaching the social event, and it's our last Cannabis Thinking of the year. So I'd like to thank everybody for this opportunity, and this is going to be a really special day in my life, and I hope the audience enjoys everything that was talked here today. Thank you very much.
Perfect, Marcelo, perfect. Just to keep the order, Pablo, please. your final words
Okay, thank you, Alex.
for this
Well, for
time,
me,
okay?
it's
For this time, because we'll
yes.
make excuse for you to come to Rio. You're safe because of the coronavirus, okay? But
Yeah,
we'll make excuses for that to happen.
yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Count on
Well,
me to make it happen.
thank you, Patricia. Yeah, well, for me, it was a great opportunity perhaps this is the first time that I have the chance to talk with Juan Manuel and with all of you about legalization, regularized drugs and cannabis and everything that happened. So for me, it's such an important moment as an individual, as a human being, for having Patricia's comments and Juan Manuel thoughts about the war on drugs and how he sees the problem and what kind of solutions is he proposing. So for me, it's so important, and I can say that I feel hope that in the next years the world will give himself the opportunity to declare peace on drugs and move forward with education, with cultural events, you know, and trying to find scientific ways to deal with the problems that we have with the drugs in the world. And I feel joy and happiness to have this opportunity to share my thoughts and just my knowledge. I have no interest at all in the drug trafficking business. Sadly, my life has been affected a lot by this way of seeing things in the world. But I truly believe that the people is not believing everything that is being told about the war on drugs and how this should be handled. So I truly believe that events like this one will give the world and Brazil the opportunity to start thinking differently for the future and for the best of our society. So I thank you very much for having and giving me the opportunity to share my experiences with you. And I encourage you to keep doing it. Thank you.
We will, and we will all keep on going, no doubt about it. Juan Manuel Galán, your final remarks, and of course, the invite to Brazil anytime. Just let us know, and we'd be delighted to have you down here very soon, as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Alex. No, I will say that I feel that Sebastian and I, we share something that it's crucial to this debate. And we share the condition that we are both victims of the war on drugs. In many different ways. But I will say that for the case of the cannabis, I think we don't have to, we cannot lose sight about the ethical sense that this process that we are in for regularization and legalization of drugs should bear in mind, especially cannabis. We have to think about the patients, about our main objective, the access to a substance that is safe, that it's of a very high standard of quality, and that helps alleviate pain and improve the way of life that many patients that suffer terrible diseases are right now dealing with and their families. And we have also to think about the small growers, the communities that have suffered the war on drugs, the violence, that are not criminals, that have not used violence against each other, but they have growth out of necessity, these illegal crops. We have to build a bridge for them to pass from illegality to legality. And and we have also an ethical obligation, and is to improve research, innovation, science. That's crucial to this industry because we have to build up scientific evidence, not only anecdotal evidence or ancestral evidence, which is a very rich part of this evidence, but anecdotal evidence about a cousin or an aunt or a grandmother that suffers something and they use cannabis and this was okay for them to alleviate their pain. We need doctors involved. We need researchers, laboratories to build up this evidence, medical evidence about cannabis, so doctors can be trustful or of prescribing cannabis for their patients. And that's a crucial thing. And finally, I will say that in this world that we're living on, I think politically, we need to recover the ethical sense of doing politics. And I think the ethical sense right now of doing politics, it's the ethic of care of human dignity and care of the planet, care of our environment. And abandoning the war on drugs will help enhance this moral value and this ethical sense of the ethics of care about human dignity and the environment. And I think we have a responsibility, as Patricia was saying, and that's the responsibility of having enough will to do things, the right thing. With will in life, you are able to accomplish almost anything with will. And we need political will here to evolve towards a new policy on drugs.
Fantastic. Fantastic, gentlemen. So, I mean, from my side, I could, again, thank you guys over and over, but to say that...
Let's remind people that we're going to have these gentlemen in cannabis, in the Cannabis Thinking 2.0. That's going
exactly.
to be December 1st with, with excellent content. So we'll have them again as our special guests.
Great.
Thank you. Thanks, Marcelo, for reminding me. I always forget about something, but there's an upcoming event called Cannabis Thinking. It's a second edition. It's fully online, and these two guys will be there with their own talks. But I just want to point out for the how comfortable every time. I've been to Colombia a couple of times, and I mean we feel so close to you guys in terms of culture, Brazil and Colombia, and I truly believe that Latin America has a great opportunity through cannabis and through this whole thinking about, like Galán said, through innovation, through startups, connection between doctors from different countries. We've been talking to doctors from all over Latin America, and so let's enhance that. Let's take this opportunity because we're still very young, all of us, and in a position to make a difference.
Let me tell you something, Alex.
Sure.
We had a Portuguese coach for the national football team, and we have 3-1 with Uruguay. We lost, and we lost 6-1 with Ecuador. That's the proof that we don't need a Portuguese trainer, but we need a Brazilian coach for the Colombian football selection, no?
Oh, you can debate that. The generation is not the best, but anyway. But football and the way we look at life and enjoy life in general, I mean, Colombia and Brazil are certainly very close. So with this, I would like to close the 10th edition of the Cannabis Thinking Talks. Again, it will be up and running in our channel in YouTube with understanding. I always forget about
the subtitles.
Subtitles in Portuguese and Spanish.
Great.
This was a great talk. Thank you all. God bless you all. See you next time.
Thank you.